Two items before we begin. Any members of the RTM that did not receive a copy of the report from the town assessor, please come forward and pick up a copy at the town clerk's desk. And I'm going to ask that Judge Caruso join me at the microphone tonight. We have some special guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Why don't we begin, if everyone would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And perhaps we'd pause for a moment of silence. Thank you.
We have a special guest in Judge Caruso here this evening. He has some special acknowledgments that he would like to make this evening.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and I thank the RTM for this opportunity tonight. You know, a few years ago you were kind enough, a few years, it seems like years. A few months ago you were kind enough to have us here as we launched something unique, a way of celebrating Fairfield's first 375 years, not just with applause and fanfare for what we've done and accomplished, but what we as a community can do to serve our fellow man and woman, and in order to produce and help feed others, to show our generosity and to come together as a community. It's with that rededication that we launched the 375th food drive, and I'd like to report to you specifically that the spirit of generosity and compassion in this community is great, and it's here thanks to so many, including you. And so tonight, if I may impose upon you for just a few moments, I'd like to acknowledge just some of those who spent so much time, who committed so much energy, so that we could have the successful food drive which raised and filled a moving van filled with food and approximately 10 tons, which means we were able to which means as a community we're able to feed hundreds of people thousands of meals. And that is a direct reflection on who and what this town is. So we're able to do this through so many people. And we were able to do this by helping and contributing through those special organizations which serve this community, especially Operation Hope of Fairfield, Bridgeport Rescue Mission, and Thomas Merton House Food Pantries. I want you to, if you don't mind, and if your name, don't see your name here, I typed it, okay? This is my weekend's activities. You can tell how tan I've gotten. I want you to take a look inside this program. That's just a listing of those people who actually signed up and showed up that weekend. Those are our neighbors who committed their time. There were many more, including the members of CERT, including the members of the police and fire departments, especially the Southport volunteers. There's so many people who we could not list because they chose not to give us their names. If you look at this program, you'll see, again, so many of the groups, but not everyone who contributed, because much of what we were able to accomplish happened as it happens all the time, through various organizations, especially our schools, our churches, and our community associations. At this point, I'd just like to recognize certainly our major corporate sponsors, which are Bigelow Tea, Bruce Bennett Nissan, the Eunice Denny Burr Chapter, the Daughters of the American Revolution, with Morris Media, Nestle Waters North America, PepsiCo, ShopRite, Stop and Shop, the United Illuminating Company, WeBe 108, Wells Fargo Advisors of Westport, and you couldn't help but notice the stagecoach rolling through town. We had Whole Foods and William B. Meyer, and to those there's certainly tremendous organizations which were a big help. There were many others, though, those that collected the food, packed it, and made it easy for us to put it on the truck. And so what I'd like to do now is to recognize just some of those organizations, beginning with our schools, public and private, and if I could ask the first selectman and the town clerk to help distribute the plaque. So if there's a representative from each of these organizations, we have a proclamation from the town, which I hope you'll all get a chance to see, but you may not want me to read it all 3,000 words at this time, because I really want to recognize the people more than the town. So if you represent one of these schools, churches, synagogues, other organizations, please come up, and we have a proclamation from the first selectman, myself, the town clerk, and Bob Hojanaki, the co-chair of the 375th committee. So I'd like to begin with our schools. We have Timothy Dwight. We have Holland Hill. We have McKinley, North Stratfield, Osborne Hill, Riverfield, Roger Sherman, Stratfield, together with our middle schools, Fairfield Woods and Roger Ludlow and Tomlinson. You have to smile, for Charlie Ore's taking the pictures here. And of course our high schools, Fairfield Ludlow and Fairfield Ward, and the Walter Fitzgerald campus of Fairfield High School. In terms of our private schools, we had great support from them, and I'd like to recognize Eagle Hill, Southport, and Fairfield Prep, Fairfield Country Day School, Great Beginnings Montessori, Greens Farms Academy, and Hillel Academy, Notre Dame of Fairfield, Our Lady of the Assumption, St. Catherine Center for Special Needs, and St. Thomas Aquinas School, and the Uncle's School. Now, I know if you're tuning in on Fair TV at some point, you think it's a snow delay, but you still have to go to school. So, you can't say enough about our churches and synagogues in this community. They're always willing. They're always there when you need them. And we'd like to recognize those that helped us in this endeavor. We have the Church of the Apostles. We have Congregation of Achim. We have Congregation B'nai Israel. Congregation Bethel. We have the Egan Chapel of St. Ignatius, Fairfield Grace Methodist, First Baptist Church, First Church Congregational, and might I just add, you know, I'm sure we all congratulate Reverend Spollet on his 30 years, but they're celebrating 375 years themselves. That's why we're here. They're going to be doing a day of service in September, and I hope we all join in that endeavor, because this is a community that cares, and that day of service is important. We have First Presbyterian Church of Christ, the Greenfield Hill Congregational Church, Holy Cross Church, Holy Family, Our Lady of the Assumption, Our Savior's Lutheran Church, Southport Congregational, St. Anthony's of Padua, St. Paul's Episcopal, St. Pius X, St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Timothy Episcopal, Trinity Baptist, Trinity Episcopal, and Trinity St. Michael's. I hope I didn't miss anyone. And we have other participating organizations without whom we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we did, both through their participation that day, the weeks before, and the help they gave us. I'd like to recognize Abbey Tent and Party Rental, Al Giulio and Al's Angels, which in fact supplied 3 whole pallets, one filled with spaghetti sauce from Paul Newman, one with salad dressing, and one with popcorn. It's a very generous donation. We have American Legion Post 143 and Post 74. We have the Buzz Truck. We have Cambridge Manor, the Carrollton, Delta Chi Delta Fraternity at Sacred Heart, Chapter 19 of the Disabled American Veterans, the Donut Inn, the Fairfield Chamber of Commerce, the Fairfield County Irish Festival, Philae, which, as you noted last week, was still collecting for us, and there are other sites still within town. The Fairfield Earth Day Committee, the Fairfield Elks, the Fairfield Museum, the Lions Club, the Fairfield Police Benevolent Association, the Fairfield Police Explorers, Post 279, collection sites at both our public libraries, Fairfield Woods and the main branch, together with Pequot Library, with Fairfield Public Schools, and you all heard them, but we also had help from the administration, a good deal, especially from the headmaster and administration at Ludlow, and especially through Dr. Title. With the Fairfield Rotary, the Fairfield Senior Center, Fairfield University Alumni Association, the Fairfield U Bookstore, the Fairfield Emergency Response Team, which Norma Peterson, if you had seen these people organizing it, it looked like the invasion of North Africa. With the Gaelic American Club, the Junior Women's Club of Fairfield, the Kiwanis Club of Fairfield, Moffley Media, Naughty Dauphin, the Retired Educators of Fairfield, and that's Jan Sharon. You probably recognize many of the retired teachers that you may have had on that day, and they do so much. We have Sacred Heart University. We have the School of Rock, which does a wonderful job playing. Shearwater Coffee Roasters, Shirt Graphics, Soft Care. Great thanks to Southport Volunteer Fire Department. We had Sweet and Simple Bakery, VFW Post 927, Village Bagels, Vinnie's Ale House, the Wakeman Boys and Girls Club, Zeta Tau Alpha Sorority, and of course, the First Selectman and I will be visiting each of the following departments and thanking them as soon as I finish typing the rest of the citations and framing them for the great work of the Public Works Department. And I see Joe Michelangelo out there, and his people were great. The Fairfield Engineering Department, Chief, the Fairfield Fire Department, super job as always, and the Fairfield Police Department. We couldn't have done it without them. My staff at the Fairfield Probate Court, Jen Carpenter at the First Selectman's office, the town clerk and her staff, and our Parks and Recreation departments. Boy, they did a wonderful job. Now, as they're working diligently, I'll just move on because really the hard work was done by a lot of people who I had asked to join me up here, and that's our committee. The members of the committee who worked extremely diligently and deserve our thanks. The Honorable Susan Barrett, Mark Barnhart, our Economic Development Director, Susan Basil, Dorothea Brennan, obviously our Town Clerk Betsy Brown, who's still working on it right now, Charles Chisano, Laura Devlin, Terry Giegengak, the Senior Center, Steve Gertner, Lynn Hendry, Paul and Patty Hiller, Bob Hojanaki, Carla Miklos, I know couldn't join us, but Donna Schmidt is here, who was usually her proxy, Norma Peterson, Christy Pope, Leo Redgate Sr., and Kendra Wingate. Is that everybody? Okay. I'll forget her. I saw this on TV once.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
I think it was The Bachelor. It's The Bachelor.
Very much. This committee is so fortunate to have had somebody coordinating me, as well as the food drive. We could not have done it without all the hard work, the dedication, and special concern that Diane Auray brought to this task. And Diane, from all of us, thank you. Of course, we have to thank Charlie Auray for lending us his mom and taking everybody's photo today. I know you've indulged us long enough on your busy schedule that we imposed on many people in this food drive, that we asked much of this community, and you gave so much more. I wish you could see all the people who helped. I wish we could thank each and every one of them. But through you, we do, and we'll always appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Charles. How are you?
As long as you don't take anything of mine. No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
And while he's taking his seat, if I could, a big round of thank you to Dan Caruso, who put all this together.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to each and every one of you who participated in this wonderful opportunity for our community to come together. Unfortunately, we're down to business, and we have a lot of it tonight. So, item number 2 on our call is to consider impact, and I'm sorry, the town clerk will call the roll.
John Donovan. Here. Michael Hurley. Here. Jay Lipp. Here. Gaylord Meyer. Eric Sunman. Here. Pete Ambrose. Here. Catherine Burstein. Here. Nathan Schindler. Jeff Steele. Keith Varian. Ed Bateson. Laura Devlin. Here. Hank Ferentz. Here. Dave McKenzie. Here. Mary McCollough. Here. Heather Dean. Present. Joe DiMartino. Bill Gerber. Here. Joe Palmer. Here. Cindy Waldron. Josh Garskoff. Lauren O'Brien. Here. Andrew Semmel. Here. Ruth Smay. Carol Way. Here. Julie Gottlieb. Here. Alan Marks. Here. Sheila Marmion. Jay Walk. Liz Ezema. Jen Hochberg. Kevin Hopkins. Eric Newman. Phil Pierce. Hal Schwartz. Kathy Braun. Alex Durrell. Jason Lee. Tom McCarthy. Jeff Millerano. Pam Iacono. Ellen Jacob. Lori McCardle. Carol Pontrelli. Chris Timniak. Brian Caffarelli. Brian Farnan. Ray Newberger. Bill Perugini. Bruce Ryan.
Thank you. Okay, on to item number 2, if I can find it. To consider and act upon the minutes of the annual budget meeting held on May 5th and the regular meeting held on May 19th. Mr. Representative Hurley.
Michael. It's on? Okay. Michael Hurley, RTM District 1. I'd like to make an amendment to the minutes to reflect my questions to Dr. Title on May 5th, page 3, to read Michael Hurley, District 1, asked Dr. Title what the potential savings were for the outsourcing of lunch services, what were the anticipated number of net new students for next year, and what were the potential pension savings.
Did you get that? Oh, thank you. Second, please. Representative Braun. Are there any further edits to the budget meeting of May 5th? Seeing none. All in favor of accepting the edits as presented by Representative Hurley, signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. Now, back to the motion of the item on the floor, which is item number 2, which is to act upon the minutes of May 5th and May 19th. Any further edits to the meeting minutes of those meetings? Seeing none, could I have a motion to accept? Representative Dean, followed by Representative Iacono. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions. Thank you. The third thing on our call tonight is to receive the Assessor's report on the tax relief for the elderly and disabled homeowners program as required under Chapter 95, Article 3, Section 15.1 of the Code of the Town of Fairfield. Mr. Ross, would you like to join us here? Thank you.
Total benefits went from last year's 3,806,602, which was last reported June 24th last year, to $3,990,407, or a $183,805 increase, approximately 4.83% increase in total benefits granted over the past year. The credit program had 131 new sign-ups, and it represents the bulk of the increase. We had no new deferral sign-ups. 3 people came off the deferral program as a result of either payoffs or one person deceased. We had 79 applications which were taken at the Senior Center this season, which was something new. It was a new program this past sign-up season, and we felt it was pretty successful. We had 79. About 5% of the applications received, and the rest were taken at Town Hall. The RTM Senior Tax Relief Committee had an information session at the Senior Center on April 5th, and there were articles published in the Senior Times and a summary of programs posted on the town website. Let's see. It's the report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Ross? Are there any questions from the public? Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Iacono.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay. I think we should have a rule. You're not allowed to turn this off. Just leave it on. I don't have a question for Mr. Ross, but through the moderator to the first selectman, mine's really just a formatting thing. It would be so helpful to the RTM if we can get these reports as soon as you have them. We're all available via email, and just if we could get advanced copies, that would be really helpful. And also, I know I've asked before, it would be incredibly helpful to get a cover memo with just a short synopsis of what we are receiving. So again, I'm just going to put that out there. Thank you.
And just for the record, I was emailed this, and I thought I had sent it to you when I sent 2 other documents in second, and I apologize if I did not send it out to you in a timely fashion.
All right, well, then I apologize if it was supposed to come and we didn't get it.
Yeah, I'd just like to clarify that my department didn't hold this up. As soon as it was requested and available, it was sent out, so, and that's kind of our standard practice. We use email, as you have commonly done, received emails in between meetings or sessions, so as soon as we have it, we'll certainly be happy to get it out. Do you have any specific questions on what the senior tax relief program is?
No, I just had a process question, that's it.
Okay, no, you said you wanted something, if I might?
Sure.
You wanted a cover memo? My question is, what do you want to know about the senior?
Just a simple, this is attached here, please find, and a simple summary of what the tax relief program is. A brief overview would be incredibly helpful.
Sure. Can we do that? Good, I believe we can do that.
Thank you.
Further questions from the body? Representative Jacob?
Hi, Ellen Jacob, District 9. Through Madam Moderator to Mr. Ross, or anyone who can answer it, really, is there a way of tracking who, of those who signed up last year, who among them have moved, left the area, transferred their property to children, went to assisted living, and therefore removed themselves from the system?
Okay, if you look at the report that we sent, we do have numbers for people who sold properties, deceased, went to rental properties.
I've seen that.
So we do have those
You
records,
do.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Donovan?
Thank you, John Donovan, District 1. I just wanted to make sure I remember some numbers correctly. The budget for this in 2014 was $4.55 million. After the budget was approved, $750,000 was cut. It was returned to the general fund. It looks like you're coming in at just about $4 million. I believe the budget was $4.255 for this, so I assume if it does come in under, those funds would then be returned to the general fund, would have a $250,000 unbudgeted save.
Just to be clear, the funds last year were not cut. In essence, they were not utilized. So we make
words.
Yep,
Yeah.
we make an allowance for a reduction in revenue. So last year we planned on a 4.5, roughly, if you let me use rough numbers, 4.5 reduction in revenue, and 3.8 was actually used. So that was be recorded as a $700,000 overage on revenue.
Right. So you had $700,000 in extra money. Are you going to have like $250,000 extra money this year?
That depends. If this were the only account in the budget, yes.
Just on a line item basis, just want to try to make sure I stay up.
If this was the only line item in the budget, correct.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions for the assessor? Seeing none. Thank you very much. No. No, we don't take comments from the public. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that Michael C. Tetreau, first Selectman of the Town of Fairfield, is empowered to execute and deliver in the name and on behalf of this municipality a contract with Connecticut State Library for an historic document preservation grant. All in favor of this item as it was written? I'm sorry. Let's have a motion first. Boy, it's been a while. Representative Iacono, seconded by Representative Dean. Thank you. Now that we have a motion on the floor, all in favor of accepting this item as written, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. Moving right on to item number 5. I'm sorry? To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that in 2013, $275,000 Small Town Economic Assistance Program, STEAP, Grant B, and hereby is accepted in order to increase handicapped accessibility at Southport Benson Marina, Southport Beach, Yee Yacht Yard, and Sasko Beach. And further resolved that First Selectman Micheal Tetreau be and hereby is authorized to apply for and execute the grant agreement and accept the funds for this project. I have a motion on the floor for this item. Representative Jessica Hochberg, sorry. Ruth May, second. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Wow, it's a good thing. Oh, by the way, just as an aside, you get July off. Can't tell what August is going to be like if this is June. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor which has been duly seconded. So everyone in favor of item number 5 as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Moving right on to item number 6, to hear the town attorney's report on a proposed donation of property at 641 Reef Road.
Just a brief introduction to set up this item. We have had a resident or property owner come before us that wanted to donate property to the town with a restriction that any proceeds we get in the sale of that item would go for use by the fire department. It's kind of a two-step process. Technically, the Board of Selectmen can accept that donation without any other approvals. Because it's our goal to, in essence, flip the condo or flip the property, all right, when we sell it, we would have to come back through the Board of Selectmen and RTM for the sale. So we thought it best to come before this body, even though you're not voting on this item, not voting on the donation, to answer any questions, make sure everybody's clear on that, so when we come back through, we've had a chance to address any of the issues that get raised. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Lesser.
I think you heard Mr. Tetreau talking from his realtor days, talking about flipping the property. It's very simple. This is just a report. We will be back, assuming that we accept this donation, which I think we're going to. We'll be back before this board because we will need your permission, along with the Board of Selectmen, and a report from the TPZ, and then this body would have to approve the sale. And just very simply, this is a condominium on Reef Road. There are 2 buildings. If any of you drove by, there's a picture of it on the appraisal that I think is was part of your package. Appraisal was done in October of 2013, and it appraised out at $420,000. It's my intention that when we get this property, it'll be free and clear. I have not yet had a title search done on it. There's no real sense in doing that until we know if we're going to take it. We did have a building inspection done, and it's in pretty good shape. There are a couple of minor things, but we're going to take it to the best of our knowledge. And then we'll come back before you to get permission to sell it. It is a conditional gift. The gentleman who is donating this condominium has specified that it be sold and that the money be put towards the purchase of a new fire truck for the town. And I think the Chief Fellner is here, or he was here. Oh, he's here. So if there's any questions of the chief, but he's the one who knew this gentleman, he's the one who negotiated this, and really this is because of Chief Fellner's efforts. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer same. You want me to call it, or you want to call
I
it?
stand. Representative Marmion.
Can we dance?
Yeah, looks like we are.
Sheila Marmion, District 6. So I just want to make sure I understand this. The RTM already approved a new ladder truck, was it February? Yes, okay, so we've already approved the budget or the monies for this truck, which was, what, 775 approximately?
The fire truck was approved as part of the non-recurring budget that we presented to this board, I believe, in February. My memory's a little short at this point, but I believe it was approximately $800,000. So
Okay.
if nothing happens from here, we are going to go forward with ordering that fire truck and spending that money. So the net result of this, I think, is where you're going,
I'm
is that
going
this would
for-
lower that amount and
Right.
make, in essence, make that fire truck that we've already approved cheaper to buy.
And that was where I was going. So we're saving the town money basically for money that we've already appropriated or approved.
Yes.
Correct? Okay, thank you.
Representative Schwartz.
Hal Schwartz, District 7. Through you, Madam Moderator, to the attorney. You said we've already done the inspection, so the town is incurring costs here, and these costs are the agreement with the owner of the property is that we will be reimbursed for the costs that we incur in order to take ownership of the property?
No, they will come out of the proceeds when we sell it.
That's what I meant. So,
Yes.
so the town will be reimbursed for that money after the property is.
Yes, the money that we turn over will be net of all the costs.
Thank you.
Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, District 1. Question to you, through you, Madam Moderator, to Attorney Lesser or First Selectman Michael Tetreau. Will a realtor be hired to sell the property at some point?
We're not sure if we're going to need one. There are a couple things which I'm really not at liberty to discuss right now, but we may or we may not. But obviously if it's marketed, put on the market, we probably will use a realtor.
Okay.
But there's it hasn't been decided yet.
If that is the case, would it be RFP'd in terms of picking how would the town go about picking a real estate broker? And you may not have the answer now, and when you come back, it's fine. But I think it's a fair question.
I assume you want to answer? I assume it's fees and professional services, so we don't need to RFP.
It comes under fees and professional services, and it's not something that would be a traditional RFP in that sense, but we would evaluate a number of realtors and select one to do the job.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Donovan.
John Donovan, District 1. I guess, Madam Moderator, through you to Chief Fellner. Actually, let me ask the question. Is there a tax write-off on this for this person?
I'm not a tax attorney, but I assume that there is, yeah. It's a donation.
It's a donation.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do this in a tax advantageous way? I understand the chief is retiring. Maybe he wants to head the, donation program for the town for us to raise other assets in that way. But is it? I mean, has that been thought through from that standpoint of putting in, what would be the tax benefits of it, and can we go out with some very positive press on what a gracious gift, and if others are interested in doing that?
It's a good idea. The chief is apparently very persuasive.
Are there any further questions? Representative Jacob.
Ellen Jacob, District 9. Just wanted to know, Attorney Lesser, if there's a contract in place now or any kind of written, anything on paper between the town and the donor? Is it
There should have
legally
been.
prescribed?
I think there was an email in the package. We have an offer in writing. It's just a simple offer to donate it. I believe it's as is. Yeah, as is.
As is?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay, and so nothing about the process, when, how, making sure that it does get to that fire truck?
Well, it's a conditional gift, so I think we would be under an obligation to use the proceeds as set forth in the condition.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Representative Malaragno.
Jeff Malaragno, District 8. Just had a question for you. It's been a while. Had a question for you, I guess, Attorney Lesser. The excess dollars that are going to be, assumed after this is done. Where does that end up in the budget?
I think, you want to answer that? The gift.
When you say excess dollars, what are you referring
Well,
to?
like 400 some odd $1,000 that we would end up with, it's not being spent on the truck that we've already budgeted. So now there's that savings. What happens to that saved money?
It's, yeah, I will have to confirm exactly, but my understanding at this point is that will be, in essence, in our restricted or designated fund balance. That's money that's designated to go to a specific purpose. We'd use that to, in fact, pay for part of the fire truck, and that would mean that we would be bonding less of that going forward. So if it were if the truck was priced exactly at $800,000, we got exactly $400,000 for the condo, then the only amount that we bond is the $400,000 on this.
Okay. And then one other question. Are there, I know that the details haven't been hammered out yet, but is the town thinking of putting on any sort of exclusions or any stipulations on who could bid on the property? Or is it going to be anybody that can bid on the property and it goes to the highest bidder?
At this point, the general concept would be we want to get the most money for the town, so we'd want to have as few restrictions as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Meyer.
Gaylord Meyer, District 1. You mentioned that there's a possibility that you might not consider doing this. And if so, why would you not? And to follow up on that also, could I have a little more clarity on if, in fact, you do use realtors, how is that process going to work?
You want to answer?
Hypothetical, so to speak.
You really haven't.
Yeah. There were at least two questions there.
First one
Okay.
was...
First question.
First, our attorney had mentioned that there's a possibility that, we may not do this.
Yeah, the only two things. One, if there's a question that comes up here that we hadn't thought of, we can't answer well, or we don't have time to get an answer for, we would certainly take a second look at this, because we're not, at this point, we are not obligated to accept.
Okay.
Right? But we have spent a couple months looking through this and looking for any reason why we might not, looking for how clean we can make this. And at this point, it seems like a reasonable approach. We just want to make sure we did two things. Let everybody in this body know what we're up to. So everybody expects to see this come back. And so we had a chance to describe the transaction before we committed to do anything. And the second piece was
If
in fact we need to get a realtor,
how is that process going to work, do you think?
we don't do that on a regular basis, so we're going to sit down and talk a little bit about that, but the challenge will be to find an appropriate realtor. There are just a few in town.
You wouldn't know any by any chance.
Just a couple, but the idea would be to come up with a fairly objective process on how we find that person.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you.
Any further questions from the body on this item? Seeing none. Thank you. Thank you, Attorney Lesser. Moving on to item number 7, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that the second amended and reinstated lease agreement between the Town of Fairfield and T-Mobile Northeast LLC for 3695 Congress Street be and hereby is approved, and further resolved that First Selectman Michael Tetreau be and hereby is authorized to execute the amended lease agreement and related documents. Can I have a motion on the floor to discuss? Representative Smay, seconded by Representative Dean.
Good evening again. I'm back before you with another lease extension. These leases, most of them were done about 15 years ago. They usually had 5-year terms with 2 5-year extensions, so it's 15 years, and they're starting to come up for renewal. This is one that is, I think this is the Congress Street lease. They're asking for another 5 years with 2 5-year options. The rent will stay the same, except for a 5% kicker. And that 5% also continues every year. So we get 5% per year increase, and it's compounded. If there's any questions? Yes? Oops.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yes, Chris Timniak, District 9. I have a couple questions because I've sort of been going back and forth on this since the committee meeting. Has there been any long-term looking into this particular deal?
Do you want to?
Like long-range planning on this?
On this one in particular, or just our leasing?
Yes, was
in
this
general?
just automatically renewed, or was there any, and I'm saying this because of the T-Mobile Sprint merger, which is going on right now. Currently, the way I added it up is there's $110,000 of contracts which are set to be, I would assume, combined when they merge together. We have the Sprint on the windmill at $17,000 a year. We have Sprint on the Congress Street tower at $55,000 a year. And we have T-Mobile on the Congress Street at $38,000 a year. My sense is if there's any long-term thinking about how that's going to play out, because clearly Sprint T-Mobile is not going to be paying $110,000. They're going to eliminate something and combine there. So a couple things I've noticed in this contract. One is obviously the language is at least 10 years old, if not longer.
You mean the original lease?
The original,
Sure,
yeah.
15 years old.
Right. So there's a couple points I'd like to point there, but I guess my first question is, has there been any long-term planning or consideration which has been done towards this potential merger?
I don't think there has. I don't think so.
Yeah, at this point, no, and I would be happy to sit down and talk with you and get some of your insights on that.
Oh, I'd be happy to do that. Now, and I think we can do this really quickly.
Just remember, if we're negotiating, we're on public display here, so.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I want to be careful.
Volunteering, Mr. Timniak.
Yes, I am, and it says in number 2 that this contract is operating month to month, so I don't see there's any reason why we should have a dialogue of in front of everybody in the cameras. If you're willing to table this, I'm happy to meet with you, and we can bring this before everybody next month.
I think that technically a member of this body would have to postpone it to a date certain, be in our next meeting, but we'd be happy to have some further discussions.
Okay.
And
All right.
just for the record, I don't think there would be a problem with doing that. I know they want to get it done, but
Yeah.
as you say, they're month to month, so.
Right, well, we have a contract with them on it, so I'd like to make a
Unless
motion.
there's something that you know of being involved in these negotiations, well, we'll talk.
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, the main thing is I want to protect what we have. So I'd like to make a motion to table this until next month, if that's postpone.
Second,
To a date certain next meeting.
seconded by Representative I'm sorry. That is correct. To a date certain would be August. Yep. Yes. All right. We have a motion on the floor, was seconded by Representative Iacono. All in favor of postponing this item until, I'm sorry, Representative Marks, do you have something you'd like to add? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Alan Marks, District 6. Through you to Representative Timniak. I'm not sure where this is going. I guess what I'm looking for is you telling us that you believe somehow your conversations will lead to additional revenue for the town, because otherwise I'm not really sure what it is, what it is we're going for here. Thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. And I guess I can do it in general terms. One is this contract is, the first date I see on here is from 1999. So I can assure you that the new contracts, which T-Mobile is doing, has fresher language to protect themselves and the cities more. One thing I would point to is the 30-day notice, which I read on page what page I got? Where the leasee can terminate the contract at 30-day notice. That was in here. The other thing is perhaps they would be interested in making a longer-term deal, more than 5 years, with a higher penalty if they do it. Right now, they're still in the merger discussion, so I would say, do we want as a town to analyze and try to put something a little stronger in play versus the
I would suggest those discussions we ought to have.
Yeah, okay, great.
I just want to make a point also. I know that they've been anxious to get this back. They wanted to get it done. And, you know, I don't know the business. You obviously know the business. But I would just want to make sure that they're on month to month and they're not going to at some point say, you know what, we want this cut down or we're going to go somewhere else. I mean, we have an opportunity to lock them in now.
Right.
And I want you all to understand that if you move to postpone this, you're taking a chance that I don't have the answer for.
Right. Well, that's. I mean, that's something which I agree with what you're saying.
I mean, they could say, we're going elsewhere. We're going to go to another tower. There are a lot of towers in town. Most of them aren't owned by the town. So.
No, I know, and that's what makes me somewhat hesitant about this.
Or you could approve it tonight, and we move on, and you do it with the next one.
could.
That's up to you. But this
part
is the body
of,
that
I
has-
guess, my frustration is here we are in June, is that this expired in March. And here we are 3 months behind before any of us have had an opportunity to look at it, whereas we could have been having these conversations in April. We wouldn't be worried about this. So one, I don't feel like that's really on us, more so as the timing we get this. The other thing is, like, I think, I mean, I'm satisfied with the general dollar amount we're getting and locking that in for 5 years. The question is whether we can lock it in longer term, or the question is there a long-term plan? Is there another offer which, and I know this is directly negotiating with T-Mobile, but is there a general strategy plan we could sit down and talk about? Because there is a big price tag on that, if that's something you're interested in doing.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Timniak, given your background in the industry, I'd love to have a chance to sit down and talk and get some of the insight. I think that, you know, based on your experience here, your credibility, your kind of background in the industry, we have a chance to tie this up and get this guaranteed income for the next 5 years. If you think that's a real, you know, if there's more money we can get, then you know, perhaps we go take a look. But if this is a reasonably good deal, which is what we thought it was, then perhaps we should go forward to this. But at some point, you've got the industry background, so you've got to help us out here a bit.
Right. No, and I'm not so much worried about the numbers. I'm worried about the contract language. So that is that's a new wrinkle which I wasn't prepared to really hammer right at this moment. I was hoping for the 30-day extension, which is now a 60-day extension. So it sort of changed that cue in my head. There are other questions out there.
The other thought would be to table it, come back to it later in the meeting, and give Chris time to think.
Would it be possible, Representative Timniak, if we could table this conversation and take this item out of turn? Is that something we could suggest? Certainly.
The thought would be, Mr. Timniak, to give you a bit more time to think through this.
I can talk it over with you guys.
And,
Yeah.
well, the idea would be to table it till we come back to it later in the meeting.
Sure.
But that takes some of the pressure off you of deciding that right now up in front at the mic. Give us time to get the benefit of your thought and potentially address any other questions out here.
All right, procedurally, Representative Steele, how we... No, if we... Yes.
Yeah.
No, there is no item on the floor to table this motion. I asked, postpone, I'm sorry. I asked Representative Timniak if he would take... I did, and I'm fine, I'm comfortable with that. The motion on the floor was to... I'm sorry, I'm so confused. To postpone until
Why don't
the
we
next
postpone
meeting.
this? We'll take it up at the end of the meeting. Table, yeah.
I'm going to ask for just a moment.
Sure.
If we would give Representative Timniak the opportunity to change this conversation until later in this meeting so we can move on to the next item and come back to this item later in the meeting. Representative Braun, certainly.
If we table, oh, it's on. If we table this, who, where, and when is this going to be discussed in private? And is that not subject to FOI? I'm a little confused.
I think the unfortunate is the words. It's to rescind the motion that's on the floor right now.
What motion is that?
The motion is to postpone. If we...
So there's an agenda item up.
Correct.
We're in discussion. A motion was made to
postpone to a day certain.
And
What
then there
I've
was a
asked
motion
the
to-
maker of the motion to do is, I've asked the body to give the maker of the motion time to discuss. I think the proper thing to do, which was just told me, is to rescind the motion, withdraw the motion.
Motion to postpone to a date certain.
Correct.
Okay. Because I have some comments I wanted to make about the lease itself.
Okay, and
regardless of
all I'm
whether- yeah.
asking for,
Okay.
if I could have Representative Timniak's attention for just one moment. Excuse me, Representative Timniak, could I ask that you formally withdraw your motion so that we can then take this item out of order?
Yes, I'd like to go ahead and take this
Thank
item
you.
out of order.
Thank you. Representative Iacono? Yes, that's fine. Thank you. Now, to the body, could I ask that we take this item out of order? Can I have somebody make a motion to that effect? Representative Dean, followed by Representative Iacono. Thank you. We're going to move on to item number 8. Thank you, Representative Timniak. All right, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution in accordance with the motion approved at the January 27th RTM meeting. Resolved that in accordance with the request from the Director of Public Works, the successor interlocal agreement negotiated by the First Selectman and subject to approval by the Fairfield Town Attorney and the RTM be and hereby is approved, and further resolved that the First Selectman is authorized to enter into new solid waste disposal agreement with Wheelabrator Bridgeport. And I see that the Mike Sembruski is here, and we have any... Oh, yes, I see Mr. Bowman. Thank you both for coming. Are there any questions? I'm sorry. A motion to discuss. Representative Dean, a second to that. Representative Iacono. Sorry. I know you got hands all over the place. All right. Are there any questions on this item? Representative Donovan. Yes.
John Donovan, District 1. Just great job, guys, in terms of negotiating the agreement. My understanding is it's a save on budget of $283,000. So that is $538,000 that we're currently under budget this year, which is wonderful, plus a potential $400,000 in long-term capital. So it's looking good.
Are there any questions for these gentlemen? Thank you very much for that praise, Representative Donovan. It was very insightful and very thorough, so thank you. I'm just totally blank. Gerber. Sorry. And I have a cheat sheet here, and I'm not using it.
Bill Gerber, District 4.
Thank you, Bill.
I'll point it out when they walk
Thank
up.
you. Oh, would you
Okay.
Could you just stand?
Just informational question. So our the capacity of Wheelabrator is 250,000 tons, right?
No, the capacity of the plant is 700,000 tons.
Oh, okay.
What we're buying into is around 250,000 tons, up to 300,000 tons.
Okay, great. My question was, do we ever bump up against that capacity? Because I read in the contract that once you go over that, you have excess costs.
It's never happened in 25 years, but it could.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you. All right. All in favor of accepting item number 8 as read I'm sorry. Is there any comments or any comments from the public on item number 8? Seeing none, back to the body. All in favor of item 8, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Moving on, we'll hear item number 9. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Education. Resolved that the following changes to Article 14 Pension Program of the Town of Fairfield Pension Plan provisions in the Fairfield Association of Educational Office Professionals labor agreement negotiated by and between the Town of Fairfield and the Fairfield Board of Education, Fairfield Association of Educational Office Professionals, be and hereby are approved. Employees hired on or after the effective date of this agreement shall participate in a 401A type pension plan with no eligibility or vesting rights in the town's existing pension system. The employee shall be required to contribute at least 4% of base salary, but may contribute up to the maximum allowed by law. The town shall match the employee's contribution up to a maximum of 4% of base salary. The town's contribution shall not vest until the employee has been continuously employed for 5 years. A motion to discuss. Representative Hochberg, seconded by Representative Marks. Discussion by the body. Comments or questions from the body? Going once. Comments or questions from the body on this item? Representative Donovan.
John Donovan, District 1. We had an opportunity to review some of this at subcommittee, so I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm planning to vote no on the upcoming pension vote. The reason for my vote is the following. We've heard many times over the past year from Dr. Title and Mr. Tetreau that moving people into defined contribution is a key fiscal objective. However, we haven't really seen progress. In the 2014-15 budget, only $40,000 is budgeted for defined contribution. Yet, over $10 million is being spent on pension. That's less than a 1% effective rate for dollars spent, and I'd assume it'd be similar rate in terms of the number of employees, as defined contribution costs less. There's no direction to the people who are negotiating these agreements that lowering long-term liabilities is a key goal. For example, as we discussed in subcommittee, the Board of Education didn't give anything up to get this union to agree to 401A for all new employees. At least that was the response for one of the subcommittees. I understand the response might have been different for a previous subcommittee. But if it was a freebie, it's probably not worth that much. I understand the challenge of leading on this objective. The people at the top have made their objectives clear by personally choosing a pension over a 401A. Where this comes from with me is that during the last budget meeting of the RTM, I think it was John Convertino, Board of Education member, that stated, the RTM complains a lot about long-term liabilities, but it approves every union agreement that comes in front of it. So this is really the choice to be heard, your chance to be heard. Unfortunately, the RTM does not get to see the details of the entire contract, but I can share some data that the state compiled on state versus private employees. This is from a 2010 report by the Connecticut Commission on Enhancing Agency Outcomes. Happy to share it if anyone wants it. Private sector administrators earn 22 to 31% less than state administrators. This is driven in large part because 34% of the salary for state employees is pension versus 5% for the private sector. Total average compensation for a state employee is $105,000 versus $74,000 for private sector. By the way, average compensation in the Fairfield education budget is $90,000 per employee. I, for one, just can't take it anymore. I'm voting no to send a message that these agreements must include a conversion of existing pension costs to defined contribution. I don't have an issue with allowing people who are close to retirement to stay on pension, as that was a promise made decades ago. However, we need to identify an equitable arrangement for people who have been here less time, some pro rata formula, and for people who have only been in the town for a few years. They shouldn't be entitled to a pension. They can certainly keep any funds that they've earned so far. This was taken out of private industry 20 years ago. These pension costs are a long-term liability. I'm not willing to take on. The only way to get the message across is to vote no on this contract. Thank you.
Representative Gottlieb.
Did you want to respond? Well, can we hear them all?
Julie Gottlieb, District 6. Just to clarify, I thought on Monday night there was a mention of trade-offs or some shared costs that were now going to be picked up by the employees that were not previously in the last contract. Is that an understanding that, we haven't seen the contract and there's some things in there? Is that correct? Sure. In Monday night's committee meeting, we had a conversation about that there were in fact some trade-offs, some things that the employees were now going to pick up as a result of this. Is that to the extent you can elaborate on it?
Without giving too many details, because this is the last piece of finalizing this contract, there were insurance concessions that were part of the negotiations that we were able to achieve as well.
Good. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Just for informational purposes, Mr. Donovan mentioned that average employees, he mentioned administrators and average employees of the Board of Ed salaries are $95,000. This bargaining unit is a secretarial unit. The average salary for our 10.5-month secretaries is $38,942. The average salary of our 12-month secretaries are $49,117. So I wanted to get that information out there as well.
Representative Iacono.
Pamela Iacono, District 9. I think some of the points that Representative Donovan is trying to make, this RTM, several RTMs ago, asked the town and the Board of Education to move new employees, new hires to a 401A program. And I commend you and the town folk for getting that done. That's been coming forward with the new contracts that have been happening, and I think, I don't want to speak for the body because we haven't voted yet, the majority of us had asked for that, either as sitting members on a different board or a previous RTM, and that was accomplished here, so that's a great thing. I think to Representative Donovan's point is more now needs to be done, and it's just not new hires that really need to come out of the pension program, it's existing employees too, and there needs to be some strategizing in figuring out how to do that and lower our long-term liabilities with that as well. Maybe not those close to retirement, but some that are maybe newer in the system. I'm just sort of putting that out there as what I'm hearing people are looking for. So it's not that necessarily anyone's disappointed that new hires will now be part of a 401A. I think we're happy that that's been achieved. It's that some folks want to start to look at existing employees and giving them an incentive to get out of the pension and into the 401A. As you move along in negotiations and as these things move forward, I know the teacher and administrator contracts are coming up and you're going to be looking at those, and that is something that this body does vote on. I can only speak for myself and tell you that I am looking for, again, more concessions on the medical benefits and contributions. I think we've done a fantastic job on the Board of Education end in that our teachers and administrators contribute the most in the entire state of Connecticut towards their medical. I'd like the town to start to do the same thing because the contributions at 11% medical on the town side for non-public safety employees is way too low, in my opinion. And I won't approve any kind of contract that comes back like that. And if it means we need to do a salary analysis and figure out a one-time adjustment and bump up our medical increase, then I think we ought to start working on that kind of stuff now. But overall, I will approve this. It's exactly what you were asked to do. You went out, you accomplished it, you got the new hires off. I think some people are now going to be looking for existing employees to move off as well.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Representative Lipp.
Jay Lip, RTM District 1. Madam Moderator, to Mr. Tetreau, what is the town's strategic plan, following what Ms. Inacoca and Mr. Donahue said, strategic plan to deal with this, with the upcoming Cadillac tax that's going to hit us in a couple of years, and things along those lines, that we need to start moving from the existing pension for the people recently hired and try to get us weaned off of this problem, and then what concessions are you guys going to try to obtain? Thank you.
Point of order, Madam Moderator. We have an item before us that is specifically asking us to vote on this particular pension item. I don't think this is calling for wide-ranging discussion on this.
It's true.
I understand Mr. Mark's point on this. My concern is that, and I agree that this is the right step in the right direction, but as a body, I'd like to hear, and if it's not at this point, I'd like to see at some point when you're going to address what the strategic plan is for the town in order to limit our long-term liabilities. As has been previously stated, we are seeing it bits and pieces. We'd like to see the long-term and how it's going to affect us with the upcoming Cadillac tax that's going to be hitting us, I think, in 2 more years.
We certainly can ask for that to be put forward to us in some future date. Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, District 4. I believe last term, our CFO, Bob Mayer, had come in and given a presentation regarding the fixed, the defined contributions and the pensions. And I'm going to do my best not to get this incorrect. I'm going to ask through you, Madam Moderator, to the First Selectman if we perhaps could have him come back again or give an update on that report. But my take on it was that we are moving the new employers, the new hires to defined contributions, but that it wasn't as easy as earlier believed or thought, and that there are expenses such as FICA that would have to be paid, among other expenses, that would actually increase our expenses exponentially, and that it had to be balanced. So to vote against something where that balance is trying to be struck now, I think it's counterintuitive what our ultimate goal is, which is to try to slowly get it to that point of more affordability. I apologize, I'm not very clear on what I'm saying, but my point is that this is a big ship, and we're turning it around a little bit at a time, and we're getting there. And I'd like to have Bob Mayer give us that report again to better explain to the new people on the RTM why it does take time to get to that point, and it's not always black and white as we would like it to be. I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
We will get that report at a future date. Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, District 1. I agree with Representative Dean that it would be helpful to have Bob Mayer come back. But I think just to be clear about this, he was talking about FICA. And I know this is a little bit off topic, but through you, Madam Moderator, to the First Selectman, correct me if I'm wrong, the only cost that would be picked up for FICA or disability would be public safety, fire, or police if they're moved to a 401A.
I think we're going to stick with
no other.
The item on the call. I think those are the kind of questions that we were going to get information for in the future.
I kind of disagree because I think Representative Dean sort of muddied the water a little bit in her discussion about FICA. So I disagree.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any?
Relative to FICA for this particular group, they already pay FICA, and so that's not a new cost to the town because that's already part of what they're doing.
Are there any other member who wishes to speak? Has not spoken. Representative Dean.
Representative Dean, the point I'm trying to make is that it's easier said than done when we want to put forward defined contributions as opposed to defined pensions, and that we need to get a little bit more information. I think that the new members of this body need to have a better understanding of what's at stake. And if I was remiss in my reference to FICA, and that's not appropriate, it was used as an example that we will incur additional expenses down the road if we change from one to another. And I think that we just need to have some clarity. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. Representative Devlin.
Laura Devlin, District 3. Since we're sort of near the topic and to the point of having Mr. Mayor come in and give a broader description of the plan around our defined benefit versus defined contribution programs, to Mr. Lipp's point and others, perhaps we could also look at what the strategy is at that time for our medical plans. Since the private sector is already moving rapidly to avoid impact from the Cadillac tax, we can find out what the town is doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what I'm going to ask every member who has a question regarding pension benefits and any questions to send those emails to me, and I will forward them to the first selectman so that at a future date we can have the presentation and get the answers to the questions that you are asking. But right now, the item on the call has been read, and we're discussing just the Board of Education. Are there any other questions or comments regarding this item? Representative Donovan.
Two questions, or one comment and one question. The study that the state did broke out FICA Social Security, FICA Medicare, unemployment, retirement. The difference between state and percentage of salary for specifically retirement is 34% of state, it's 5% of private sector. In terms of Medicare, medical, it's 18.5 by 11.7. So I guess the question to Mr. Dwyer, if this is voted down, could you please let us know what would be the next steps that would take place from that?
That's really a legal question as to what the next steps in contract mediation and what not. So I'll have the attorney address that.
Hi, Josh Wyatt, counsel for the board. If this is voted down by the RTM this evening, the matter will probably go to interest arbitration.
And then as it goes into arbitration, the typical process for that is they'll go item by item and then basically pick one for one side, one for another side.
I mean, the rest of the contract's been agreed to, so this would be the only item that would go to interest arbitration.
So when we vote on these agreements, the only impact for it is the specific item that's in front of the group?
Correct.
I didn't realize that.
For this agreement, for certified employees, you consider the entire agreement. For the non-certified, that's in the jurisdiction of the Board of Education.
So a vote against this only screws up. So effectively, what would happen then?
It would take the contract, which has already been presented to the union, been approved by the board, would then go to interest arbitration because of the pension provision not being approved by the RTM.
So the logical conclusion of that is a vote against this just means it dies.
No. It means it costs, it means it...
Yeah, but it's between a yes and a no on one item. Okay, thank you.
I guess while the members of the Board of Education and their council are discussing, I do have one question for them, which would be, what would be the cost incur if we do not accept this motion as it was presented this evening?
Further to Mr. Donovan's question, in interest arbitration, the arbitrator will take into consideration, did the two parties agree to this contract? And to the extent that it was negotiated in good faith, that the terms were presented to the Board of Ed, and the Board of Ed accepted those terms, should the RTM turn it down and we ended up in interest arbitration, the fact that it was negotiated in good faith and the fact that the Board of Ed approved it would weigh very heavily on the arbitrator, and the arbitrator would award the contract as it has been presented to you tonight. It would not die. It would just mean we're paying extra money to accomplish the same thing. And the extra money is to law firms. One last comment, if this is the last comment. I thank members of the body who have revisited the history of this. This is a town pension plan. The Board of Education has always represented to our bargaining unit that we are bargaining on behalf of the town, and the town has asked us to negotiate a change of the pension plans and to negotiate it for new employees. And that's a several-year process, and so that is what we have been accomplishing. In future years, should the town and the RTM give us different marching orders as to what you want us to try and accomplish, that's what we will go after. But we, at the moment, have been representing what I think over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years has been the RTM's stated position.
Any further questions from members of the body? Any comments from the public? Back to the body. We're going to vote on item number 9, to hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Education. Resolved that the Thank you. Voice vote. All in favor of this item as it's written, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Aye. Representative Donovan? Representative Hopkins? Abstentions? Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to item number 10. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution adopting the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council Multi-Jurisdictional Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2014. Okay, this will take seconds. Okay, thank you. Whereas the town of Fairfield has historically experienced severe damage from natural hazards, and it continues to be vulnerable to the effects of those natural hazards profiled in the plan, i.e. flooding, thunderstorms, high wind, winter storms, earthquakes, and dam failure, resulting in the loss of property, life, economic hardship, and threats to public safety. And whereas the town of Fairfield has developed and received conditional approval from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for its hazard mitigation plan under the requirements of 44 CFR 201.6, and whereas public and committee meetings were held between June 21, 2013 and September 19, 2013 regarding the development and review of the natural hazard mitigation plan, and whereas the plan specifically addresses, could I ask the members of the body to please hold their conversations? Thank you. Whereas the plan recommends, all right, where did I leave off? Whereas the plan specifically addresses hazard mitigation strategies and plan maintenance procedure for the town of Fairfield, and whereas the plan recommends several hazard mitigation actions and projects that will provide mitigation for specific natural hazards and that impact the town of Fairfield with effect of protecting people and property from loss associated with those hazards, and whereas adoption of this plan will make the town of Fairfield eligible for funding to alleviate the impacts of future hazards. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the representative town meeting that the plan be and hereby is adopted as an official plan of the town of Fairfield. 2, that the respective officials identified in the mitigation strategy of the plan be and hereby are directed to pursue implementation of the recommended actions assigned to them. 3, that future revisions and plan maintenance required by 44 CFR 201.6 and FEMA be and hereby are adopted as part of this resolution for the period of 5 years from the date of this resolution. And 4, that an annual report on the progress of the implementation of this plan shall and here be presented to the Board of Selectmen by the Greater Bridgeport Regional Council. May I have a motion to discuss? Representative Marks, a second. Representative Iacono. Any questions on this item? Any comments from the any questions from the body? Representative McCarthy.
Tom McCarthy, District 8. Just one question, and I don't see Mark Barnhart here to answer, but perhaps, I beg your pardon?
We have a representative here.
Very good. Okay. Just a quick question. I understand there was a lapse in continuity of this agreement. Should we be all concerned about that time frame during which the prior plan was not in force? Would you? I can lower this for you.
Thank you.
Not very well.
Good evening. My name is Megan Sloan. I'm a planner with the GBRC. Some of the reasons that there was a lapse in the plan was because of the availability of grant funding. We were only awarded a grant from DEEP in late 2012. Other issues with the lapse of the plan included additional FEMA requirements that were different than 5 years ago. They were much more rigorous. And also the unprecedented impacts of Hurricane Sandy. I think in the future, as the last item in the resolution stresses an annual report, and number 3, plan maintenance, I think maybe there'll be less of a chance of any lapses occurring.
Thank you. Representative McCarthy.
Fair enough. I just want to make sure that, going forward, we don't like to leave problems uncorrected and just want to make sure that, we do address this going forward. And it doesn't sound to me like there was any exposure as a result of the lapse. Is that a fair statement as well? No. Okay. I had to ask a question.
Thank you. Representative Bateson.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Ed Bateson, District 3. Quick thing. Under now therefore it be it resolved, item number 3. Future revisions, or what was just referred to as planned maintenance. Who's that up to? The GBRC? Modifications?
Ms. Sloan.
We'll work with the town on that. This is a plan that was developed between the GBRC and the town of Fairfield. So those revisions will occur, first of all, the update every 5 years, and then the annual reports that are required as part of the plan. And I know the town of Fairfield's interested in the community rating system program. Proactive maintenance of the natural hazard mitigation plan is emphasized in the community rating system program. So that's another way that the town can maintain the plan too.
Certainly. Do you have another question?
Yeah, I did. What? If he wants to address it. Just to expand on that, in the development of this plan, we brought in 30 stakeholders. They actually met in this room. I think Mr. Becker's not, is Mr. Becker still here? He was one. Mr. DiMartino was part of that from the RTM at the time, representatives from the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, as well as different groups located both in the beach area and outside the beach area, such as the Fairfield Beach Residents Association were part of that. Also, conservation, DPW, zoning, building, and health, police, and fire all sat in on part of it, as well as the Board of Ed. All sat on part of that to make sure the whole community was represented. So any changes or modifications would kind of go through that same process in terms of making sure all the stakeholders were represented, and then it comes back. So the town is intimately involved in terms of our departments that relate to this are very much involved in what's going on.
Okay. I don't necessarily have a problem with that process. It just, from reading this, it looks like from an RTM point of view, once we approve this plan, we're giving you the power, or those stakeholders, the power to revise this plan without it coming back to us. And I'm not saying, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure that it's not a sole decision by GBRC, that it's made in conjunction with you and those stakeholders.
This is the town of Fairfield plan. GBRC was able to get a grant to save us money, but they also used that grant for the 6 towns that belong to the organization. So kind of that's where we've been doing, we've talked about regionalization. This is one example of regionalization, doing a process we all get together on, which saves our town money and gets us through the process.
Okay.
So it's our town, so we'd have to vote on it, much like we're bringing it here. And Megan, you have to correct me as to which body it is that wants not only the Board of Selectmen, but the legislative body of the town to approve this, which is why it's here before the RTM.
Yes, that's correct. And any official FEMA revisions to this plan, like the update 5 years from now, that has to be approved by the RTM. So anything that FEMA sees on the plan would need to be approved by your body.
Any change to this agreement?
Yes.
That doesn't read well with item number 3, though. It basically says you don't have to come back and get our approval. Stan, unless I'm reading that wrong? It says that future revisions and plan maintenance adopted as a part of this resolution for a period of 5 years. That means anything that changes for the next 5 years in this agreement doesn't come back to the RTM. And I'm fine with that as long as you guys are running the show.
Yeah, one, it's a town of Fairfield plan, so yes. Second, and I don't have the details for the part that I'm about to quote, but it does say, as required by 44 CFR 201.6 and FEMA. So they've got to be modifications.
So you're
that are
saying
required
FEMA is
by
going to say
those.
it's going to have to come back to us?
If FEMA comes back and either that, or FEMA's going to come back and say you need to put a comma here and dot this over here and change this word, they're going to define what that is.
Okay, that's what I was interested in. Thank you.
Representative Donovan.
John Donovan, District 1. I just want to go on the record in regards to where it says economic hardship. During Sandy, it was really tough working at the library. I thought it was great. You had electricity. Bandwidth was terrible. I really believe this plan should address bandwidth. There's a lot of people here commuting to the city. They're not going to be able to get in. You really couldn't work, and I think it's an economic hardship. And maybe you can't address it, but to really seriously think about how can we get the appropriate bandwidth for people who want to come to a central location with electricity so they can work on their computers, because it was really tough at the library. It was great, but you just couldn't get the bandwidth.
If you'll kind of drop me an email on that, I'll take a look between library staff and IT staff, what the cost of those improvements are, and we'll see if we can get it included in the next budget.
Absolutely. The other thing was the schools, in terms of what are they going to do with the schools. Now, included in the next budget, part of it was this is grant money. So how is that balanced out in terms of how to address it? But I think there is a plan that's needed. I've talked to Joe about it before. I think you've got the electricity stuff handled, it seems. But yeah, to put that in to say what would those costs be, how can you handle it?
The bandwidth question, I'm not sure when you say what about the schools, I'm not sure at all what you mean in terms of what about the schools.
The schools had put in a request for incremental funds for bandwidth. I think some of that was cut a couple different times. Maybe there's a solution in terms of in times of crisis, you go to one of the 2 high schools, there's electricity, there's bandwidth. Is it the high schools? Is it the library? I'm not exactly sure the locations that we're trying to go to. And then are those locations adequately staffed with both electricity, potentially showers, and bandwidth?
Yeah, it probably doesn't make sense to go through it all now, but we do have shelter programs set up. We housed almost 400 people at Ludlow High and almost 60 pets. So, and that's wonderful, and it was great. I'm really more considering my own personal experience of trying to go work at the library and seeing probably 200 guys who were in the same situation who may commute in or go someplace else and are just trying to do some emails and everything else, and there just was no bandwidth. So, let me think through it more clearly. I'll send you a note by the end of this week, just in terms of it would be great for us to think through how that can be addressed, because the cell towers stop working, as we know. There's other ways that it stops working, and just for people to think about this issue as its own issue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the body? Any comments from members of the public? Representative Barron.
I'm not sure if this was already mentioned, but how much, this is all done so we can get grant money. Is the grant money 9.5 million? I have that in my notes, and I'm not sure if it was discussed tonight. How much is the, we're getting grant money to do this, as this program that we have to do, or not? This has nothing to do with getting money? I don't know why it's in my notes.
I'm going to let Mr. Wendt answer the numbers question, but just to be clear, there are two types of grants and one other benefit of this. There was a grant we received to actually put together this plan. It's about, Megan, 100 and something pages in its thickness, and bring in facilitators to do the workshops, then also hold a public session last September to go through all this. So those are that's one type of grant that we got to actually put the plan together. There's a second type of grant program that's available for people who live in flood-prone areas to help them with flood mitigation. In the beach area, that means raise your house. So I'm going to leave Jim to the total amount of dollars on that. And then the third component is the Community Rating System, or CRS, which basically allows for discounts to flood insurance. Based on our getting points for all the different efforts we've taken in flood mitigation, our people in a flood zone that are paying flood insurance can get, practically speaking, between 5, 10, possibly as much as 15% off for things we do collectively as a town to help them out. So those are the grant. One grant was put together. We've already spent the money to put this together. One is for helping flood mitigation, raising houses. Third will be helping us qualify for the CRS program to help with discounts on flood insurance.
Jim Wendt, Assistant Planning Director. I think your notes were from one of the subcommittee meetings last week. Yes. While this plan would make the town potentially eligible for future grants, we have some current grants in the pipeline, the federal share of which is approximately $9.5 million, that this approval of this particular plan is a prerequisite for.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions from the body? Are we ready to go to a vote? All in favor of accepting this item as, I already went to the public. All members, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. All right, back to item number 7. To hear, consider, and act upon the following resolution as recommended by the Board of Selectmen. Resolved that the second amended and reinstated lease agreement between the Town of Fairfield and T-Mobile Northeast LLC for 3965 Congress Street B and hereby is approved. And further resolved that First Selectman Micheal Tetreau be and hereby is authorized to execute the amended lease agreement and related documents. Representative Marmion? Well, can we have I don't know that we postponed. You're making a motion to discuss? Oh, we tabled it. Yes. Second? Representative Marks. Go ahead. Representative Marmion.
Sheila Marmion, District 6. I just have a question through you, Madam Moderator, to Mr. Timniak. Could you give us your expertise in this area? I don't know what your background is. I don't know if this is what you do for a living, just so that I understand where you're coming from.
Chris Timniak, District 9. I am the City Administrator for the City of Ansonia. I recently just negotiated a cell phone tower lease and have all the updated current language and negotiated with 3 different companies. And that was what led me to address this particular contract.
Okay, so in your role with the town of Ansonia, you do this, you work through this language, and you recently negotiated a contract? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Representative Braun.
Kathy Braun, District 8. I've read the lease several times. I don't really have a problem with it. I don't know if there's specific language in tech leases that might be different than this, but this looks like a pretty standard lease. I just want to reassure everyone, my reading of the leases, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Lesser, the 30 days notice to terminate is only if they're unable to operate for some reason. They can't get a license or a permit or some kind of regulation makes it illegal and unable to do the work. I see Representative Ambrose is nodding. So I don't see anything in here that says they can just get out in 30 days. And frankly, I don't think they can get out if they merge. I think that would be a violation of the lease. They'd be in default, and we could make them pay rent for the rest of the lease term unless we have a duty to mitigate. I mean, I'm getting lost in the weeds here, but the point is, the lease is the Bible. I don't think you can change the lease just because you merge. That's my opinion, as just one lawyer in a room with about half a dozen lawyers in it.
Correct.
Okay, so based on that, unless there's some tech language or very specific things for cell towers, some kind of special insurance thing that should change. The insurance language might be a little outdated, but I'm sure they're well insured. I'm sure we make sure of that. I know we're a named insured. There's all kinds of indemnifications of us. I don't really have a problem with it. And I did note that somebody provided us, or the moderator sent us the lease amounts that are prevalent in other contracts of this nature, and we seem to be towards the high end of it. So unless I hear something that says there's something glaringly wrong with this lease, I think it's a good enough lease from my point of view.
Thank
so
you,
I would
Representative Brown.
support it.
Thank you. Are there any further? Representative Timniak.
Yes, I just want to say that I addressed my questions with the attorney, and I think it's worth passing. It's not something which I think we can address now within the next 60 days before our next meeting. I was mostly looking for the long-term plan and whether the merger had been analyzed, whether they'd actually looked at everything as a complete package. That was the impetus for me slowing this down. Since then, Attorney Lester has addressed my concerns. I recommend passage of this bill.
Thank you, Representative Iacono.
Pamela Iacono, District 9. To that point on a long-term plan during committee, I had raised the issue of a summary of lease information. I know Representative Dean agreed with me and thought it was a good idea. We did get a partial list, but we didn't get a summary. I guess we should have been more specific. In looking for a summary of lease information, I was not just looking for a listing of the lease and the rent brought in. What I wanted to do was understand the leases that the town held, the terms of those leases, for example, the start and end dates, the square footage, if applicable, and then the amount of the rent that we are receiving from those places. So if we could get a summary sheet that lists out those things, that would be really helpful, knowing, people have mentioned tonight, we were looking for information about some of the other cell towers and where we are with leases, and that sheet really doesn't tell us anything other than amounts. So if we could get something more specific, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the body? Representative McCarthy?
Tom McCarthy, District 8. Through you, Madam Moderator, to Attorney Lesser. Just a point which came up during a subcommittee meeting, and I'd ask the question. I think maybe the question is what exactly we are leasing. And in the language of the agreement, it talks about the quote-unquote premises, but those premises include not only real estate, but quote-unquote space on the tower. And my question was, where does our hardware end, and where does the lessee's hardware begin?
If you look at the, in the original lease, not the amendment, it does define that.
I saw that.
We own the tower and the space that it's sitting on.
Right, right. So
and all the equipment, the actual, broadcast equipment, the antennas, all the electronics, that's theirs. We own the tower, and we lease them space on the tower and space on the ground for they usually have a little hut.
right. So if the infrastructure fails, that's on us. But if the equipment fails, that's on them.
I think to a large extent, the way I read it, it is, yeah.
Okay.
The tower's ours. It talks about painting the tower if the landlord or one of the other tenants is going to paint the tower. There could be provisions in some of the other leases that require some other tenant to paint it. I don't know. But it is our tower.
Okay, well, that's what the agreement says, but again, it's a question of the hardware, and it also extends to the building in which other supportive equipment is installed.
I don't know that you can generalize. I think that some of these companies put their own, some of them they put a little hut in there themselves. They ask for more space sometimes when they expand it.
Well, the agreement says space in the tower and space on the ground adjacent to the tower, collectively the premises. Okay.
Right. We just lease them the space. I don't know for sure, but I think they put their own huts up for their equipment.
All right. I just want to make sure what we as a town are liable for in the case of failure, and it doesn't sound to me like any of the hardware that we need to be concerned about.
No, certainly not the broadcast hardware.
I
That's
understood.
theirs. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further questions on this item? Representative Lipp.
Jay Lipp, District 1. Quick question. Do we have, when we put these leases out there, do they go out to bid or get posted or public notices so that other companies can bid on the same tower that we own and maybe get a more competitive bid and maybe get a better deal for the town and our taxpayers?
I don't think, these aren't put out to bid. Maybe originally they were, but the towers have antennas from a bunch of different companies on them, so, and I think that by law, they have to be shared among all the companies. So, in other words, we're just leasing space, and my guess is, and I don't know for sure, that there's more space on these towers. So if another company wanted to come and put an antenna on the tower, they could do that.
So if we put out to bid that we are renewing this or something along those lines, is that something that we would be able to get more people to use the towers and therefore more revenue for the city or town?
If you wipe the slate clean and there were no cell towers in Fairfield, then perhaps what you're suggesting would work. But at this point, there is a cell phone network. Most of us know that because we use it most days. So really what we're looking for is gaps in coverage. For those of you that follow the Fairfield Grace Methodist cell tower kind of story, all right, there's a gap in coverage. They're looking to fill that. We still have to find a cell tower to help fill that gap. I just got a email from the folks at Verizon that have a gap in coverage along 136 and are exploring some opportunities up there. But they're really filling in gaps now. So we can put it out to bid, but if they don't have a gap in coverage, they're not going there.
Oh, no, I understand. It would be interesting to see, because we had a discussion in committee about if there were, that once something comes out there, that people may want to jump on and get the contract. So I was just curious, how do we notify people that we have a tower that there's space on, or do they already know this already? And should we go out to bid for this and other things that we lease out to the public when they get renewed?
All right. Again, we're talking about an existing cell phone system for major companies that's already in play. All right. So they are targeting areas where they need additional coverage. So if you go to Westport, they're targeting somebody there. If you go to New Canaan, they're targeting somebody there. If you go to Stanford, they're looking at something there. But they're looking to fill a need or fill a gap. They have the coverage maps. They know where they need the service.
All right, thank you.
Every tower in Fairfield is listed on the state database, so the companies all know where they are.
And just to be clear, while the town does own 3 cell towers, there's approximately 30 in the town. So just on average, if somebody needs coverage, they may not be coming to the town as it is anyway.
Any further questions from members of the body on this item? Seeing none, any comments from members of the public? Seeing none, back to the body. We're ready to vote on this item. Item number 7. All those in favor of accepting this item as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Next item on the agenda was the referral of Fair TV to LNA that's being held over. So the final item on our agenda is consider and act upon any other matters presented to said meeting and which may be properly acted upon by under the rules of the representative town meeting. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Representative Iacono, Representative Lee, Thank you all for your patience with me this evening. A little out of practice. Thank you. All right, just remember, we're not here in July.